group. Okay, so we are now on Shmuel Bet chapter 4. And here we go. Now, this chapter, we're going to do a bit of a ping pong because we're going to start off with a couple of things and then we're going to jump all over to try and piece together a very odd pasuk. So if you recall last time, Avner, who was he was the general, he was the real power in the house of Shaul. He wasn't of the house of Shaul by blood, but he was the general. And ultimately, Yoav double crosses David, and as an act of vengeance against Avner's killing of Asael, Yoav's brother, so Avner is killed. So we're told Vayishma ben Shaul ki met Avner. So the son of Shaul hears that Avner passes away in Hebron. Vayifu yadav v'chol Yisrael nivhalu. And so his hands became weak, and all of Israel was alarmed. This is a very shocking and difficult moment. Now, this next sentence 2 and 3 are the really complicated sentences. It says, Ushnei anashim, there are two people, Sarei Gedudim, they are, I guess, the platoon commanders. Hayu ben Shaul, right, they were with the son of Shaul. Ha'echad bana v'shem hasheni Rechav. So one's named Bana, the other one's named Rechav. So far, everything's pretty normal. Two captains, previously unknown people come into our picture. B'nei Rimon, they're from Rimon, children of Rimon, ha-be'eroti, right, from this place Be'eroti. Mibnei Binyamin, of the children of Binyamin, ki gam Be'erot techashev al Binyamin, because Be'erot is thought of as Benjamin. Now, you have the same information conveyed twice. One is they are of Be'eroti of Benjamin, and then it tells us that Be'erot is thought of as Benjamin, which means it's kind of not Benjamin. It's a little bit like, is Puerto Rico the United States or is it not the United States? It's a protectorate of the United States. It's got a representative in Congress that doesn't vote, right? Something odd there. It's of Benjamin, but it's not Benjamin. So we're going to put we're going to go and see, we're going to put a placeholder on what that is. We're going to see what happens here. And then we're going to try and understand this place, Be'erot, of Benjamin. It says, Vayivrechu ha-Be'erotim gitaima v'yusham garim ad hayom hazeh. And the people of Be'erotim, they escaped to Gitaima, and they are there they live until this day. So again, another weird piece of information about this place. V'Yonatan ben Shaul ben Nechei Raglaim ben Chamesh Shanim. So Yonatan, the son of Shaul, has a child who is essentially, maybe he's a paraplegic. Nechei Raglaim means his feet are smitten; they are somehow damaged, and he's 5 years 5 years old. Haya bevo shmuat Shaul v'Yonatan miIsrael. So he's 5 years old when his father Yonatan and Shaul die in the Israelite valley, Emek Israel. Vatisaehu omanato vatanos v'hi bechavza lanus v'yipo v'yivsach shmo mifi Boshet. So what do we know about him is that in all of that hullabaloo when his father dies and the rout of the Plishtim, so his nurse dropped him and he was paralyzed in that event, and his name happens to be Mipi Boshet. Now again, that ending of Boshet, which means embarrassment, probably means Mipi Baal, and it was meant to say, if he was born today, he would be Mifiyahu, right? Or he would be from the mouth of God would be his name, right? And so it's now telling us that there is a survivor now of the line of Shaul, but he's a paraplegic, right? So clearly not exact. And he's what, 12, 13 at this point? He's very young. And what happens? Vayelchu b'nei Ramona beroti Rechev uvana. These two guys, Rechev and Vana, vayavo kachom hayom. They come. Kachom hayom means in the heat of the day, which means in broad daylight. That's Hebrew for broad daylight. El Beit Ish Boshet. They go to the house of Ish Boshet. V'hu shochev et mishkav tzorayim, and he's having an afternoon nap. V'hinei bo ad toch habayit lokchei chitim vayuku el hachomesh v'rachav bana avachiv nimlatu. What happens here? They go into the house. They're pretending to be Amazon, right? They're delivering wheat. They are wheat porters. They come in disguised as wheat porters. They stab him in the chomesh, in the belly. By the way, everybody in these last couple chapters, that's how they die. That's how Asael dies. That is how Avner dies. And now that's how Ish Boshet dies. So the line of Shaul is now almost over because we've now assassinated Ish Boshet. And the only person left now is Mephi-Boshet, this crippled son. Now, again, two guys, we don't know anything about them yet. Bana and Rechav. They come in and the power is gone. They hear the power is gone, right? Who's the power? The power is Avner. He was the head of the army. In comes these two stealthy guys dressed as wheat porters, swords in their flour sacks, stab Mephi-Boshet in the belly, and disappear. Not only do they kill him, but they take his head. Right? And they run away with his head through the Arava. So they think, okay, you know what? Let's do ourselves a favor. Let's take the head of our David's enemy, Ish Boshet, to David as a prize. Now, clearly, they haven't read the last couple chapters because David, we know, is very protective of Beit Shaul. He does not want to scratch a hair on the head of anybody of the Shaul's house. Vayomru el hamelech hinei rosh Ish Boshet. Oops. They say to David, here's the head of Ish Boshet. Ben Shaul oivecha asher bikesh et nafshecha. Right? The one who tried to kill you, right? Civil war, the enemy. V'yitem Hashem la'adoni hamelech nekamot hayom hazeh mishaul mizaro. He gave us vengeance of Shaul and all of his offspring. And David is going to answer, Vaya'an David el Rechev el Bana achiv b'nei Rimon habe'eroti vayomer lahem Chai Hashem asher padat nafshi mikol tzara. So David says, God has, thank God, preserved me from all calamity, from all negative outcome. Ki hamagid li lemor hinei meit Shaul v'hu haya mevaser be'einav v'yochaz bo v'yargeu b'tziklag asher l'titi lo b'sora. So the man who told me that in Tziklag that Shaul was dead thought he was bringing good news. Remember the Amaleki child, right?
Yeah.
Av ki anashim rishayim hargu et ish tzadik beveito hamishkavo v'ata halo abakesh et damo miyetchem uverati min haaretz, right? I was suspicious and I punished the Amaleki who finished off Shaul. You think I'm going to do any less for the one who in cold blood murders the offspring, the scion of the house of Shaul? And David is going to make a very public demonstration. He wants word to get out that this is not how we roll. Vayitzav David et hanarim vayargum. David commanded to kill them. Vayikatzu et yedehem. He cut off their hand. Vet ragleghem. Vayitlu abrecha bechevron. So he puts it in a public square. He he lets it be known that these are the people who stretch their hand against the king. You would have to say that there's a horat sha'ah, because one of the rules of haruge beitin is that you're supposed to bury them immediately. But here, David is worried about all these people thinking that he really secretly wants them to be killing members of Shaul's house. That's not what he wants at all. And so he knows that the rumor of what Yoav did got out there, and this is what happened. So now he's got to make it equally newsworthy. Did you hear what David did? He cut off their hands and he put their heads on a spike in Brechat Chevron. And what does he do with the head of Mephi-Boshet? That Rosh Mephi-Boshet lakhu v'ikru kever Avner b'Chevron. He buries him next to the burial place of Avner, the general. The house of Shaul has its own burial plot now in Chevron. Chevron, the birthplace, the burial spot rather of the patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. There is not necessarily in the cave of Machpelah, but being buried in Chevron means that you're being buried where the patriarchs are buried. You're buried in the capital of Yehudah. He's letting them know that we are putting his head in an honorable spot.
Rabbi, do we have any knowledge of where those graves are in Hebron?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I have not researched that. Now, back to Recha. So, okay, simple terms. What is this chapter about? This chapter is about the fact that David is not going to suffer vigilantism against the house of Shaul. David is going to protect the house of Shaul. But there's a backstory. This Rechav and Bana, right? We talked about these two verses here, that they came from Be'eroti, which was in Binyamin. It's attributed to Binyamin. Is it in Binyamin? Is it not in Binyamin? And these people, the Be'erotim, fled to Gitaima. So we learn, by the way, that in Yoshua, that Vayisu b'nei Yisrael vayavo el areihem b'yom hashlishi v'areihem giv'on v'akfira uve'erot u'kiryat yarim. This city of Be'erot, right here, is a city of the Givonim. Now, the Givonim are a group of people that sort of lied to David about who they were, and they undertook a conversion, which is a sort of a suspicious conversion. And they took upon themselves to be wood choppers and water carriers. But what happens is Shaul apparently conducts a campaign of malice and violence against the Givonim. So it says, Vayihi bimei David, Shaloshan. This is the end of the book of Shmuel. We get a little bit more information about these Givonim. It says, Vayihi ra'ab bimei David, Shaloshanim shana achrei shana, Vayikevesh David et pnei Hashem. So there is a famine, and David is trying to figure out what is the spiritual source of this famine. If there's a famine in the land of Israel, it must have come from some sort of sin, and David is trying to figure out what that sin was. Yomer Hashem el Shaul ve'el beit damim asher himit et hagivonim. What's the reason for this famine? Because of the house of Shaul and the blood guilt that they bear because they slaughtered the Givonim. Vayikra melech Givonim vayomer alehem hagivonim lo b'bnei Yisrael heima ki im miyetar hemori v'nei Yisrael nishbu lahem v'yavakesh Shaul hakotam b'kanoto livnei Yisrael v'Yehuda. So who are these Givonim? The king of the Givonim called out to Israel, and they said the Givonim are not of the children of Israel, but rather they are the Emori, and Shaul came to smite them because he was sort of ultra patriotic. He was zealous for the children of Israel and Yehuda. So what does David say? Vayomer David ala Givonim, ma aseh lachem v'ma chaper. How can I atone for the sin of Shaul? Uvarchu et nachlat Hashem, and bring blessing back to the inheritance of God, meaning the children of Israel. Vayomru lo hagivonim ein lanu כסף וזהב עם שאול ועם ביתו, ואין לנו איש להמית בישראל, ויאמר מה אתם רוצים עשה לכם. So the Givonim say, right, we have no claim of silver and gold against Shaul and his household. We have no material claim against any other person in Israel. ויאמרו אל המלך האיש אשר קילנו ואשר דימה לנו נשמדנו מייצב בכל גבול ישראל. But, right, the people who massacred us and tried to exterminate us should be brought to justice, right? He should not be allowed to live in Israel. Yutan lanu shiva nashim mibanav hukam anun laHashem begivat Shaul b'chir Hashem. So, let 7 of his male issue be handed over to us, and we will impale them before Hashem in Givat Shaul. And the king said, "I will do this." Now, this is a very complicated situation. We will deal with how to understand exactly what happened in this chapter when we get there. We'll leave that very open question for the moment. But what we see here is these 2 individuals, Bana and Rechav, they are Givonim. And what are they trying to do? They're not bystanders looking to simply advance the throne. They're like, this is our opportunity. This is our opportunity to take vengeance for what Shaul did to all of our people. And so these 2 individuals secretly then try and kill off the line of Shaul. And David basically says, not on my watch. I'm not going to allow this happen. Again, this is a chapter which lets us know that David is trying to unify Israel. He has remained from beginning to end. David has always remained protective of Shaul and of Yonatan and all of Yonatan's offspring, both because he believes in it, but also because he took the oath to Yonatan. And so we see David is now picking up the pieces of the Yoav catastrophe of having murdered Avner. Even though David gave him a blessing to go in peace, Yoav murders Avner. Avner is of the house of Shaul. Then it seems like it's open season, and David does everything he can to try and cauterize the wound and stem the bleeding. So that's this chapter 4. Yes, Shirley.
I just find it interesting that Shaul becomes so nationalistic with the Gibonim and wants to exterminate them. But when he was appointed king, wasn't he a little bit?
It was the Amalek. You're right.
Yeah, Amalek.
Your point is like in contrast to Amalek, it's a very interesting dynamic, and it could be though that what he was trying to do with Amalek was seize property and parade around his victory over the king, and that was a way of sort of making it very personal about Shaul. And Shmuel basically said, no, your job is to listen to the Navi, not to make yourself into some kind of hero on the backs of this command. And so, I think you're correct. It's a very good observation, but it I think sharpens exactly what was wrong with the Shaul piece, or with the Melech Amalek, Agag Melech Amalek. All right, Tov, put this one in the books, and I will send out the video to the group. And please God, we'll be back on regular schedule next week.
Thanks very much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, everybody.